I need you to understand something before I say anything else. I am not crazy. I know how this sounds. I know what you're going to think when I tell you what I found in those yearbooks. But I have the scans. I have the photos. I have the names, the dates, the enrollment records that don't exist for a girl who shows up in 37 consecutive graduating classes. 37 years. Same face, same smile, same slight tilt of the head, like she's listening to something just out of frame. I don't work at that school anymore. I don't live in that town anymore. And if you're smart, if you have any connection to Grayfield Consolidated School District in Harmon County, Ohio, you'll stop reading this right now and forget you ever saw it. Because the moment you start looking for her, the moment you really start paying attention, that's when it changes. That's when she knows. But I can't keep this to myself anymore. Not after what happened to Dale. Not after the yearbook they published this spring, the one I'm in. Standing in a photo I never posed for, in a hallway I've never been inside, and she's right behind me, smiling. I moved to Harmon County in late August of 2023. That's important to establish because people keep asking me how long I was there, like the duration matters. Like there's some threshold of exposure that separates the people who can walk away from the people who can't. I was there for 9 months. I don't know if that's enough. I guess I'll find out. The job listing had been specific in a way that should have made me suspicious. Archival digitization specialist, Grayfield Consolidated School District. Full-time benefits, $52,000 a year. For a guy with a library science degree and 6 years of experience scanning microfiche at a university that was actively trying to eliminate my position, it sounded like a miracle. Rural Ohio, sure. Middle of nowhere, absolutely. But the posting said the district had received a state heritage preservation grant and needed someone to digitize 40+ years of student records, photographs, yearbooks, and administrative documents before the old wing of the school was demolished in the summer of 2024. Straightforward work, methodical, the kind of thing I was good at. I applied on a Thursday. They called me Friday morning. I interviewed over Zoom the following Monday, and by Wednesday I had a formal offer letter signed by the superintendent, a woman named Dr. Patricia Voss, who spoke with the careful, measured cadence of someone who had spent decades choosing her words very precisely. "We're thrilled to have someone with your qualifications, Mr. Calloway," she told me during the interview. "The archive is extensive, and frankly, it's been neglected for longer than any of us would like to admit. You'll be doing important work." I should have asked why it had been neglected. I should have asked why a district with a declining enrollment of fewer than 800 students across 3 buildings had received a $340,000 preservation grant. I should have asked a lot of things, but I needed the job, and the truth is, I wanted to leave. My apartment in Columbus had become a mausoleum of a relationship that had ended badly, and the idea of spending a year in some quiet rural district, alone with old documents and the hum of a flatbed scanner, sounded like exactly the kind of purgatory I deserved. I arrived in Harmon County on August 28th. The town of Grayfield sat at the intersection of 2 state routes that had once been moderately traveled and were now mostly used by agricultural trucks and people cutting through to somewhere better. Population 3,100, though that number felt generous. Main Street had the bones of a place that had once been alive, a hardware store, a diner called Rosie's that was open for breakfast and lunch only, a small library that shared a building with the post office, and 3 churches for a population that seemingly couldn't agree on how to worship the same God. The school complex was at the east end of town, a sprawling collection of buildings that represented every era of American public education architecture. The elementary wing was a 1950s brick rectangle. The middle school section had been added in 1971 and looked like a concrete bunker with windows. The high school was the oldest part, built in 1932, renovated in 1968, and mostly unchanged since. Behind it sat the old wing, a 2-story annex that had been the original high school gymnasium and was later converted into storage and administrative overflow. That was where the archive lived, and that was where I would be working. They gave me an office on the ground floor of the old wing. It had been a coach's office. At some point, there was still a whistle hook on the back of the door, and it smelled like dust and old varnish. The room was maybe 12 by 14 feet, with a single window that looked out onto the faculty parking lot. They'd set up a workstation for me, a desktop computer that was at least 5 years old, a commercial-grade flatbed scanner, a label printer, and a digital camera for oversized items. On the desk was a binder with the project scope, a timeline, and a handwritten note from Dr. Voss that read, "Welcome, Ethan. Please see me if you have any questions. The archive room is upstairs, second door on the left." The archive room. I'll describe it because it matters. It was on the second floor of the old wing, accessible by a staircase that groaned under every step, like the building was complaining about being used. The hallway up there was dim. 2 of the 4 overhead fluorescent panels were dead, and no one had apparently seen fit to replace them. The floor was that old institutional tile, the kind with tiny flecks of color and a beige base, and it was cracked in places where the foundation had shifted. There were 4 doors in that hallway. 3 were locked. The second one on the left was the archive. The room itself was large. It had been a classroom at some point, maybe 2 classrooms with the dividing wall removed. Metal shelving units ran in rows from one end to the other, and every shelf was packed. Banker's boxes, file folders, loose stacks of paper held together with rubber bands that had long since lost their elasticity. And yearbooks. Rows and rows of yearbooks, arranged chronologically, starting from 1952 and running through 2023. That first day, I just walked the room, took inventory, made notes about what was there and what condition it was in. The oldest materials were in rough-shaped water damage, mold on some of the boxes, mouse droppings in the corners. The yearbooks, though, were in surprisingly good condition. Hardbound, most of them, with embossed covers that read, "The Grayfield Sentinel," in gold or silver lettering. Each one was a time capsule. Hairstyles, fashion, the slow evolution of a small town seen through the faces of its children. I picked up the 2023 edition and flipped through it. Current students, bright faces, forced smiles, the usual assortment of club photos and candid shots. Nothing remarkable. I put it back and pulled out 1990. Bigger hair, different world, but the same gymnasium in the background of the basketball team photo. The same oak tree visible through the window of the English classroom. I didn't start the detailed scanning work until my second week. That first week was all intake, cataloging what existed, creating a digital index, establishing the workflow. Dr. Voss checked in on me twice, both times appearing at my office door with the silent precision of someone who had practiced moving through schools without being heard. She asked if I had everything I needed. She asked if the equipment was functioning. She did not ask what I had found, which struck me later as odd, because that's usually the first thing an administrator wants to know about a project they're funding. The other staff were polite but distant. The school secretary, a woman named Linda Harrigan, who had worked at Grayfield for 22 years, showed me where the break room was and told me the coffee was free, but the creamer was communal, meaning I should contribute a bottle every now and then. The custodian, a quiet man named Dale Whitford, gave me a ring of keys and told me which ones opened which doors in the old wing. He was maybe 60, with the weathered look of someone who had spent most of his life doing physical work. And he spoke in the sparse, functional way of a person who didn't see much point in saying things that didn't need saying. "You need anything moved, you let me know," he said. "Some of those boxes are heavy." "Thanks, Dale, I appreciate it." He nodded and started to leave, then stopped in the doorway. He didn't turn around. "The third door upstairs," he said. "The one past the archive. Don't worry about that one." "What's in there?" "Nothing you need." He left. I didn't think much of it at the time. Old buildings have rooms that are off limits for mundane reasons. Asbestos, structural concerns, storage for things that aren't part of your project scope. I made a mental note and moved on. The scanning work began on September 11th. I remember the date because I had just set up my workflow system. Scan, label, upload to the district's cloud server, log in the master spreadsheet. I decided to start with the yearbooks because they were the most visually interesting items in the archive and would make for a good progress demonstration when Dr. Voss inevitably asked for a status report. I began with the most recent yearbooks and worked backward. The logic was simple. Newer books were in better condition and would scan faster, letting me refine my process before tackling the older, more fragile volumes. 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020. The pandemic year, thinner than the others, with masked faces and socially distanced group photos that already looked like artifacts from another era. The work was meditative. Open the book, position it on the scanner, capture the page, rotate next page. Each yearbook took about 90 minutes to scan completely. I listened to podcasts while I worked, true crime mostly, which in hindsight feels like some kind of cosmic joke. By the end of my second week, I had scanned through the 2010s and was into the 2000s. The faces changed, the fashion changed, the printing quality changed. But Grayfield remained Grayfield. The same hallways, the same gymnasium, the same front entrance with the stone steps and the iron railing. It was like watching a time lapse of a place that refused to evolve. I was scanning the 2005 yearbook on a Tuesday afternoon when I had the first moment of recognition. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a thunderbolt of realization. It was more like the feeling you get when you see someone in a grocery store and you know you've seen them before, but you can't place where. A girl in the junior class composite photo, third row, fifth from the left, dark hair, shoulder length, parted slightly off center, a round face with high cheekbones and a smile that was, and this is the part that's hard to describe, somehow more present than the smiles around it. Every other student in that photo was performing the act of smiling. She looked like she was smiling at someone, at something specific. There was a directness to it that made the photo feel less like a portrait and more like a candid shot that had somehow been inserted into a formal grid. Her name, according to the caption, was Emily Marsh. I noted it the way you note anything mildly interesting during repetitive work, a brief thought, a small mental bookmark, and moved on. I scanned the rest of the 2005 yearbook, then the 2004, then the 2003, and there she was again. Same face, same hair, same smile, same slight leftward tilt of the head, maybe 5 degrees off vertical, like she was listening to something just outside the frame of the photograph. Her name in 2003 was Jessica Pruitt. She was listed as a sophomore. I stopped scanning. I pulled the 2005 yearbook back out and opened it to the junior class composite. I put the two books side by side on my desk. I looked back and forth between the photos for a long time. It wasn't a resemblance. It wasn't a family similarity, sisters maybe, or cousins who shared strong genetic features. It was the same face, the same exact face, the same proportions, the same bone structure, the same distance between the eyes, the same curve of the jaw, the same small asymmetry in the earlobes where the left one was slightly lower than the right, the same smile. I told myself it was a coincidence. I told myself that in a school this small, in a town this insular, family resemblances could be startling. I told myself that maybe Jessica Pruitt and Emily Marsh were the same person. Maybe she'd changed her name between sophomore and junior year. Maybe there had been an adoption or a family situation. Things like that happen. But the age didn't work. If she was a sophomore in 2003, she should have been a junior in 2004, not 2005. And she looked the same age in both photos. Not 2 years older, not even slightly different. The same. I pulled the 2004 yearbook off the shelf and flipped to the junior class composite. I scanned every face in every row. She wasn't there. I checked the sophomore class. Not there. Senior class, not there. I checked the club photos, the sports teams, the candid pages, the faculty section, the index. No Jessica Pruitt, no Emily Marsh. No version of that face appeared anywhere in the 2004 yearbook. She was in 2003. She was in 2005. She was not in 2004. I sat in my office for a while after that. Not scanning, not working, just thinking. The rational part of my brain was generating explanations. She moved away and came back. She was homeschooled for a year. The photo was miscaptioned. I was seeing patterns where none existed. The other part of my brain, the part that had been trained by years of working with archival documents to notice inconsistencies, was saying something simpler and less comfortable. Something is wrong with this. I went back to the archive room. I pulled every yearbook from 2000 to 2010 off the shelf and carried them downstairs in 3 trips. I spread them across my desk and the floor of my office, and I went through every single one. 2000, Sarah Kettner, freshman, 3rd row, 2nd from left, same face, same smile. 2001, not present. 2002, Claire Dunham, freshman, Fourth row, sevens from left, same face. 2003, Jessica Pruitt, sophomore. Third row, fifth from left. 2004, not present. 2005, Emily Marsh Jr., third row, fifth from left. 2006, not present. 2007, Rachel Voss, freshman, second row, third from left. I stopped when I read that name, Voss. The superintendent's last name was Voss. I stared at it for a long time, then wrote it down and kept going. 2008, Rachel Voss, sophomore, second row, fourth from left. 2009, not present. 2010, Amanda Greaves, freshman, fourth row, first from left. Same face, every single time. The same dark hair, the same round cheekbones, the same 5-degree head tilt, the same smile that looked like it was directed at someone specific rather than a camera. Different names, different class years that didn't follow any logical progression, gaps where she didn't appear at all, but the face was identical. Not similar, not reminiscent, identical. I went back upstairs and pulled the 1990s. 1990, Danielle Farrow, sophomore. Same face, same smile. 1991, Danielle Farrow Jr., same face. This was one of only a few times the same name appeared in consecutive years, following a normal class progression. 1992, not present. 1993, Megan Hale, freshman, same face. 1994, Megan Hale, sophomore, same face. 1995, not present. 1996, Allison Kramer, senior, same face. First time she appeared as a senior, same smile. 1997, Christina Bell, freshman, same face. 1998, not present. 1999, Christina Bell Jr., skipped sophomore year apparently, same face. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, not yet. From the adrenaline of pattern recognition, the archivist version of striking gold. Except the gold was something that shouldn't exist. I was kneeling on the floor of my office surrounded by yearbooks, and I had a legal pad where I'd been tracking every appearance. And the list was growing into something that couldn't be explained by coincidence or family resemblance or any of the comfortable rationalizations I'd been constructing. I pulled the 1980s, 1989, Laura Sheehan Jr., same face. 1988, Laura Sheehan, sophomore, same face. 1987, Laura Sheehan, freshman, 3 consecutive years under the same name, the longest unbroken stretch I'd found. 1986, Karen Weber, senior, same face, same smile, same tilt of the head. 1985, I opened the yearbook and went through every page, every composite photo, every club picture, every candid shot, every corner of every page. She wasn't there. 1984, not there. 1983, not there. I checked 1982, 1981, 1980, all the way back to 1974, which was the oldest yearbook where the photo quality was good enough to make a reliable comparison. Nothing. No version of that face appeared anywhere before 1986. It started in 1986. Whoever, whatever she was, the first time she appeared in a Grayfield yearbook was 1986, as a senior named Karen Weber. I sat on the floor of my office and counted. From 1986 to 2023, she appeared in 26 of 37 yearbooks, 26 times under 14 different names. She was never in the same grade for more than 3 consecutive years. She skipped years seemingly at random, and she never in any yearbook appeared in anything other than a class composite photo. No clubs, no sports teams, no candids, no superlatives, no individual portrait in the senior section. Just the composite, just a face in a grid of faces, always smiling. I didn't sleep well that night. I was staying in a rental house on Elm Street, a small 2-bedroom bungalow that the district had helped me find, owned by a retired couple who had moved to Florida. It was clean and quiet and completely devoid of personality, which suited me fine. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and running through explanations. A prank. Someone at the school had been inserting the same photo into yearbooks as a long-running joke, except the photos weren't inserted. They were printed as part of the page, the same resolution and quality as every other student photo, and the names were different each time, which meant the prank would have required altering the student roster as well. A family, some extended Grayfield family with remarkably consistent genetics, except the names came from different families. Sheehan, Weber, Farrow, Hale, Kramer, Bell, Marsh, Pruitt, Kettner, Dunham, Voss, Greaves. I'd have to check whether any of those names were connected, but they spanned what seemed like the entire social fabric of the town. A glitch. A printing error that somehow reproduced the same face across decades of yearbooks. Except printing errors don't change names. They don't skip years. They don't maintain perfect image quality across changes in photography technology from film to digital. None of the explanations worked. They all had holes large enough to drive the entire mystery through. And lying there in the dark, I realized something that made the hair on my arm stand up. I had been in that archive for 2 weeks. I had scanned dozens of yearbooks page by page, and I hadn't noticed her until I was deep into the 2000s. How many times had I scanned her face without seeing it? The next morning, I tried to approach it like a professional. I was an archivist. I dealt in facts, documents, verifiable records. If this girl, these names existed, there would be enrollment records, report cards, disciplinary files, transfer documents. Something. The student records were stored separately from the yearbooks in a row of filing cabinets along the east wall of the archive room. They were organized by year and then alphabetically. I started with 1986 and looked for Karen Weber. The W's in the 1986 filing drawer went from Walsh Timothy to Whitman Gregory. No Weber, no Karen Weber, no withdrawal form, no transfer notice, no enrollment application. As far as the official records of Grayfield Consolidated School District were concerned, Karen Weber had never attended the school. But there she was in the yearbook, third row, sixth from the left, smiling. I checked Laura Sheehan, 1987, no record. Danielle Farrow, 1990, no record. Megan Hale, 1993, no record. Allison Kramer, 1996, no record. Not a single one of the 14 names I had documented existed in the enrollment files. 14 names, 26 yearbook appearances across 37 years, and not one piece of paper to prove that any of them had ever walked through the front doors of Grayfield High School. This is the point where a normal person would have told someone, gone to Dr. Voss maybe, or called the state archives office, or posted about it online. But I want to be honest about what I was feeling, because it matters for understanding why I did what I did next. I wasn't scared, I was fascinated. This was the most interesting thing I had ever encountered in my career. And some part of me, the part that had gone into archival work because I liked solving puzzles, liked the feeling of finding a document that made a confusing timeline, suddenly makes sense. That part of me wanted to be the one who figured it out. So instead of telling someone, I started building a database. I created a spreadsheet with every appearance, year, name used, grade listed, position in photo, which yearbook page, and any distinguishing details I could observe. I scanned high-resolution copies of each appearance and arranged them chronologically on my monitor. I overlaid them digitally, adjusting for slight variations in lighting and camera angle. The overlays confirmed what my eyes had told me. The face was identical, not similar, identical. The distance between the pupils, the width of the nose, the ratio of forehead to chin, every measurable parameter was the same within the margin of error you'd expect from different photographic conditions. If this was a real person aging over 37 years, they hadn't aged a single day. The face in 1986 and the face in 2023 belonged to the same person at the same age, 15. She looked 15 in every photo, a sophomore. Though her listed grade changed freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, she always looked 15. I decided to ask Linda Harrigan about it. Not directly, I wasn't going to walk into the front office and say, hey, I think there's been a ghost in your yearbook for 4 decades. But indirectly, casually, in the way you bring up something curious while making small talk over coffee. It was a Wednesday morning. I found Linda in the break room, stirring powdered creamer into a mug that said, World's Okayest Secretary, in fading letters. I poured myself a cup and leaned against the counter. Hey, Linda, quick question about the yearbooks. I've been scanning through them, and I'm noticing some inconsistencies with the student rosters. Names in the yearbook that don't appear in the enrollment files. Is that common? Maybe students who enrolled late or left early? She sipped her coffee. Could be. The yearbook photos are usually taken in September or October. If a kid enrolled after picture day, they might not make it into the composite. But if they were here for picture day and then transferred out, right, they'd be in the yearbook but not in the end-of-year records. It happens sometimes. We're a small district. Kids come and go. What about students who appear in the yearbook for multiple years but have no enrollment records at all? Linda's spoon stopped moving. It was a small thing, barely a pause, but I was watching for it, and I saw it. The spoon stopped for maybe half a second, then resumed stirring. That would be unusual, she said. Her voice was the same, her face was the same, but the spoon had stopped. I found a few names that show up across several years in the composites, but I can't find any corresponding files. No enrollment forms, no grade reports, nothing. It's like they were never officially registered. Old records get lost, Linda said. She picked up her mug and walked toward the door. Especially from the 80s and 90s. We had a water leak in the archive in 2001. Destroyed a lot of files. Was there? I'd focus on what's there, Ethan, not on what's missing. She paused in the doorway without turning around, and in that moment, the gesture was so similar to the way Dale had paused in my office doorway that I felt a cold thread pull through my chest. That's just my opinion. She left. I stood in the break room alone, holding a cup of coffee that I no longer wanted, and I replayed the conversation in my head. She hadn't asked which names. She hadn't expressed curiosity or confusion. She hadn't offered to help me check the records or asked if I'd looked in the right drawer. She had simply redirected, the way you redirect a child away from a room they're not supposed to enter. I found Dale later that afternoon. He was replacing a light bulb in the hallway outside the gymnasium, standing on a stepladder with a pack of fluorescent tubes tucked under his arm. I waited until he was done and then fell into step beside him as he walked back toward the maintenance closet. Dale, can I ask you something? You can ask. How long have you worked here? 31 years this December. So you would have been here in the 90s, early 90s. I started in 93. Do you remember a student named Megan Hale or Danielle Farrow? Dale stopped walking. He didn't pause. He stopped. Dead stop, mid-stride, like someone had pressed a button. He stood there with the fluorescent tubes under his arm and looked at me. And for the first time since I'd met him, I saw an expression on his face that wasn't neutral. It was something between anger and fear. And it was directed at me with an intensity that made me take a step back. Where'd you get those names? He asked. The yearbooks. I've been scanning. I know what you've been doing. He looked down the hallway in both directions, and the motion was so deliberate, so clearly the action of a man checking whether he was being observed, that my skin went cold. Come with me. He led me to the maintenance closet. It was a narrow room, maybe 6 feet wide, lined with shelves of cleaning supplies and spare parts. He closed the door behind us and turned to face me. In the harsh light of the single overhead bulb, the lines in his face looked like cracks in dry earth. Listen to me, he said. I don't know what you found in those yearbooks, and I don't want to know. But I can see it on your face. You found something that doesn't add up, and now you want to pull that thread until you get an answer. Dale! Don't tell me what you found. I'm telling you this because you seem like a decent person, and because I don't want what happened before to happen again. Leave it alone. Do your scanning, digitize whatever they want you to digitize, and don't go looking for things that aren't in the files. What happened before? What do you mean, what happened before? He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. There was a teacher, he said, Nancy Pullman. She taught English here from 88 to 2004. Good teacher, good person. She noticed something, I don't know what. She never told me exactly, and I didn't ask, but she noticed something in the school records. And she started asking questions. Started pulling old files, talking to people in town, making phone calls to the county records office. What happened to her? She retired. That's the official story. She retired in 2004 at the age of 52, which is young for a teacher with her seniority, and she moved away. Didn't tell anyone where she was going, didn't keep in touch with anyone here, just left. That doesn't sound... I went to her house the week before she left. She was packing, not calmly, not like someone planning a move. She was throwing things into boxes like the house was on fire, and she looked at me with this expression. Dale's voice faltered. She looked at me like she was already somewhere else, like part of her had already left, and the part that was still standing in her living room was just the residue. Did she say anything? She said, "Dale, it knows I know." That's all she said. "It knows I know." And then she asked me to leave, and I never saw her again. We stood in the maintenance closet in silence. The fluorescent bulb hummed above us, that constant 60 hertz vibration that you stop hearing after a while until suddenly you hear nothing else. "What is it?" I asked. "I told you, I don't want to know." He opened the closet door. "And neither do you." I should have listened. I want that on the record. Dale Whitford gave me a clear, honest, frightened warning, and I should have listened. But I didn't because the archivist in me, the puzzle solver, the pattern finder, the guy who had spent 6 years in a basement finding satisfaction in making disordered things orderly, that part of me was already in too deep. The spreadsheet was growing. The scans were accumulating. The mystery had its hooks in me, and walking away would have felt like leaving a sentence unfinished in the middle of. I went to the Grayfield Public Library the next day. It shared its building with the post office, as I mentioned, and the library portion was a single large room with wooden shelves, a circulation desk staffed by a volunteer named Brenda, who appeared to be approximately 100 years old, and a microfilm reader in the back corner that looked like it hadn't been used since the Clinton administration. I told Brenda I was researching the history of the school district for the digitization project. She was delighted. Apparently no one ever came in asking about local history, and she directed me to a section of shelves near the back that held bound volumes of the Harmon County Register, the local newspaper, dating back to the 1940s. I started with 1986. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, some event, some incident, some explanation for why that year was the starting point. Why 1986? Why not 1985, or 1980, or 1970? Something had happened in 1986 that either created this anomaly or made it visible for the first time. I spent 3 hours going through the register from January to December 1986. Small town paper published weekly, school board meetings, high school football scores, church fundraisers, obituaries, birth announcements. The fabric of life in a rural Ohio community during the Reagan era, rendered in smudgy newsprint and earnest prose. I found it in the October 17th edition. Grayfield student dies in accident. Karen Weber, 17, a senior at Grayfield High School, died Saturday following injuries sustained in a single vehicle accident on County Road 9. According to the Harmon County Sheriff's Department, Weber was a passenger in a vehicle driven by fellow student Timothy Walsh, 18, when the vehicle left the roadway at approximately 11:40 p.m. and struck a utility pole. Walsh was treated and released from Harmon County Memorial Hospital. Weber was transported to the hospital but was pronounced dead on arrival. The Sheriff's Department reports that speed and road conditions may have been factors in the crash. Weber was a member of the class of 1987 and is survived by her parents, Gerald and Donna Weber of Grayfield, and a younger brother, Scott. Funeral services will be held Wednesday at Grace Lutheran Church. I read the article 3 times. Then I went back to the yearbook data in my head. Karen Weber, the first appearance, 1986 yearbook, listed as a senior. She would have been in the class of 1987. The article confirmed that. The yearbook photo would have been taken in September or October of 1986, before the accident on October 11th. She was photographed alive, and then she died, and then she came back, not as Karen Weber, as Laura Sheehan in 1987, as a freshman, starting over. I felt something shift in my understanding of the situation, like the ground tilting beneath a house. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a printing error. This wasn't a family resemblance. A girl had died in 1986, and her face had been appearing in Grayfield yearbooks ever since, under different names, in different grades, never aging, never acknowledged, never absent for more than 2 consecutive years. I drove back to the school. It was after 5 and the building was mostly empty. I went to my office, opened my laptop, and started searching for the other names. I had library databases, newspaper archives, and public record searches available through the project account. It took me 4 days to work through all 14 names. What I found made the pattern worse. 7 of the 14 names belonged to real girls who had attended Grayfield at some point. Not during the years the name appeared in the yearbook with that face, during other years. Earlier years in some cases, later years in others. Real girls with real enrollment records and real families in Harmon County. But in the years where the face appeared under their names, the real girls were either too young to be in high school, too old, had already graduated, or in 2 cases had moved out of state years earlier. The remaining 7 names had no matches in any record I could find. They didn't correspond to any family in Harmon County. They were fabrications. Names attached to a face that shouldn't have been there. Printed in yearbooks that were distributed to hundreds of students and families, and apparently never questioned by anyone. How is that possible? How does a face appear in a school yearbook under a name that doesn't belong to any enrolled student, and nobody notices? Nobody says, "Who is that? I don't recognize her." Nobody says, "That's not Jessica Pruitt. I know Jessica Pruitt, and that's not her." Unless they do notice. Unless they notice and they don't say anything. Unless they can. I want to describe the exact moment when the investigation stopped being academic and started being something else. It was October 3rd, a Thursday. I know the date because I had been keeping a meticulous log, the way you do when you're building a case, and you want every fact time-stamped and documented. I had rescanned the 1993 yearbook that morning, the one with Megan Hale, because I wanted a higher resolution capture of her face for the overlay comparisons. I scanned the relevant page, saved it, and moved on to the next yearbook in my queue. Normal workflow. Nothing unusual. That evening, after everyone else had left the building, I was reviewing the day's scans on my computer. I opened the 1993 file and navigated to the composite page. Megan Hale wasn't in the 3rd row anymore. She was in the 2nd row, second from the right. Same face, same smile, same tilt, but she had moved. In the photo I had scanned that morning, she had been in row 3, position 4. I had documented it in my spreadsheet. I had the original scan from weeks earlier showing the same position, and now she was somewhere else in the photograph. I checked the original scan from September, row 3, position 4. I checked the scan from that morning, row 2, position 7. The same yearbook, the same page, 2 different scans taken weeks apart, and she had moved. I went upstairs, I pulled the physical 1993 yearbook off the shelf and opened it to the composite page. She was in row 2, position 7, as if she had always been there, as if she had never been anywhere else. But I had the earlier scan, I had the proof, unless the file was corrupted, unless I had made an error, unless I was losing my mind. I sat in the archive room for a long time. The building was silent around me. That particular quality of silence that large, empty buildings have at night, where the absence of sound becomes its own kind of presence. The fluorescent light above me buzzed its constant 60 hertz note. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe ticked as it cooled. And then I heard something else. It was faint, so faint that I couldn't be sure I was hearing it at all. A sound like humming. Not musical humming, not a tune or a melody. More like the vibration of a voice being held at a single sustained note, the way you might hum to yourself in an empty room when you don't realize you're doing it. It was coming from the hallway. I stood up. The sound continued, barely audible, hovering at the threshold of perception. I walked to the archive room door and opened it. The hallway was dark. The 2 working fluorescent panels had been turned off, either automatically or by a timer, and the only light came from the archive room behind me, spilling out in a long rectangle across the cracked tile floor. The hallway stretched in both directions. To the left, the staircase leading down to the 1st floor. To the right, the 2 other locked doors. The humming was coming from the right, from the direction of the 3rd door, the one Dale had told me not to worry about. I stood in the doorway and listened. The sound was steady, unwavering, like a machine rather than a person. It didn't get louder or quieter. It didn't change pitch. It just continued, a single note sustained in the darkness at the end of the hallway. I should have left. I know that. I should have walked down the stairs, gotten in my car, driven back to Elm Street, and never gone upstairs again after dark. But the archivist in me, the same stubborn, puzzle-obsessed part of my brain that had kept me digging through yearbooks long after common sense should have made me stop. That part of me walked down the hallway toward the sound. The third door was closed, same as always. Same old wooden door with the same brass knob, dulled by decades of hands that had turned it. The humming was louder here, but still muted, as if it was coming from behind several layers of material. Behind the door, behind a wall, behind something else. I tried the knob, locked. I pulled out the key ring Dale had given me and tried every key. None of them fit. I put my ear against the door. The humming stopped. The silence that replaced it was absolute. Not just an absence of the humming, an absence of everything. The building sounds, the pipe ticks, the electrical hum, the subtle noise of air moving through old ductwork, all of it stopped, as if the building itself had held its breath. I stood there with my ear against the door, and I felt something I can only describe as attention. Not a sound, not a sensation, a quality. The quality of being perceived. The feeling you get when someone is watching you and you know it. That prickling animal awareness that bypasses cognition and goes straight to the brainstem. Something on the other side of the door was paying attention to me. I stepped back. The building sounds resumed, pipe ticks, electrical hum, the subtle breathing of a structure at rest, as if nothing had happened. I went back to my office, packed up my laptop, and left the building. I didn't run. I walked at a normal pace, but I locked every door behind me, and when I got to my car, I sat there for 5 minutes with the engine running and the headlights on, staring at the upper windows of the old wing. One of the lights was on, the third room, a pale, yellowish light visible through a window that I had never seen illuminated before. As I watched, the light went out. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my laptop open, going over the scans, comparing the two versions of the 1993 composite. She had moved. I wasn't imagining it. The pixel data was different. The surrounding faces had shifted to accommodate her new position, as if the photograph had reorganized itself around her, as if she was the fixed point and everything else was adjustable. At 2 a.m. I opened the scan files for other yearbooks, the ones I had already processed and uploaded to the cloud server. I started with 1986, Karen Weber, class of 1987, senior composite. I had documented her position as row 3, position 6. I opened the scan. Row 1, position 2, front row near the left edge of the frame. She had moved in this one too. I checked 2005. Emily Marsh had been third row, 5th from left. Now she was first row, center, dead center of the photograph. Every other student arranged around her like satellites. I checked 2023, the most recent yearbook. I had scanned it during my first week on the job before I'd noticed anything unusual. I opened the composite for the sophomore class and searched for her face. She wasn't there. I went through every page of the 2023 scan. Every composite, every club photo, every candid. She wasn't in any of them, but I had documented her in the 2023 yearbook during my initial survey. I had included it in my spreadsheet. 2023, Olivia Chambers, sophomore. I had the entry, I had noted it. I opened the spreadsheet and scrolled to the 2023 row. The entry was there in my own typing, dated September 15th, but the face was gone from the scan. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The rental house was quiet. Outside, a dog barked once and then stopped, as if it had thought better of it. She was moving in the photos. She was appearing and disappearing. Not just across years within the scans themselves, within the digital copies I had already made and uploaded. The files I had created were changing, or my perception of them was changing. I didn't know which possibility was worse. The next morning, I went to see Dr. Voss. I had avoided her since the initial onboarding week, partly because she seemed to prefer it that way, and partly because I wasn't sure how to ask an administrator about supernatural phenomena without getting fired. But I was past the point of worrying about professional consequences. Her office was in the main building, a corner room on the second floor with windows that overlooked the front lawn. The door was open when I arrived. She was sitting at her desk, reading something on her computer. and she looked up with an expression of polite expectation that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Calloway, come in." I sat in the chair across from her. The office was neat, organized, impersonal. The kind of space that had been carefully curated to convey competence without revealing personality. A framed diploma from Ohio State, a small American flag in a desk holder, a photograph of Dr. Voss with a group of students at what looked like a graduation ceremony. No family photos. "I need to ask you about something I found in the archive," I said. "Of course. The yearbooks. I've been going through them systematically, and I've noticed there's a student who appears in multiple yearbooks across several decades. Same face, different names. No enrollment records for any of the names. The first appearance is 1986, and the most recent is 2023. I watched her face as I said this. I watched for the pause, the flicker, the momentary crack in the professional mask that would tell me she knew what I was talking about. And I saw nothing. Her expression didn't change. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't look away or shift in her seat. She just listened. "That sounds unusual," she said when I finished. "What do you think explains it?" "I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. You've been superintendent here for how long?" 18 years. "And before that?" "I was a principal at the middle school for 7 years. Before that, I taught social studies at the high school for 12 years. So you've been in this district for 37 years." The number hung between us. 37 years, the same span as the yearbook anomaly. Her expression remained neutral. "Have you ever noticed anything unusual about the yearbooks?" I asked. "Unusual in what way?" "In the way I just described. A face that appears repeatedly under different names." She was quiet for a moment. Then she folded her hands on the desk and looked at me with something that might have been sympathy or might have been assessment. "Mr. Calloway, I want to be direct with you. The digitization project is important to this district, and we appreciate the work you're doing. But the scope of your assignment is the preservation of existing records, not the investigation of historical anomalies. If you found inconsistencies in the yearbook records, I'd suggest noting them in your project log and moving forward with the scanning work. With all due respect, Dr. Voss, this isn't an inconsistency. This is the same face appearing in 26 yearbooks over 37 years with no enrollment records. That's not a filing error. Something is Ethan. It was the first time she had used my first name. There are things about small communities that outsiders don't always understand. Patterns that look strange from the outside have their own logic when you know the context. I'd encourage you to focus on the work you were hired to do." "One of the names she appears under is Rachel Voss," I said. 2007 and 2008. And there it was, the crack. It was small, barely visible, but I saw it. A tightening around her eyes, a micro expression of something that flashed and vanished in less than a second. Not surprise, not anger, fear. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. Dr. Voss unfolded her hands, placed them flat on her desk, and smiled at me. "I don't have a daughter," she said. "I've never been married. The Voss name is common in this part of Ohio. German heritage." She stood up. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" I left her office knowing two things with absolute certainty. First, Dr. Voss knew about the girl in the yearbooks. Second, she was terrified. What happened next happened quickly, and I want to recount it as precisely as I can, because the sequence matters. On the evening of October 8th, I went back to the archive after hours. I had a theory I wanted to test. If the photos were changing, if she was moving within them, I wanted to see if the physical yearbooks were changing too, or just the digital scans. I had been accessing the scans remotely from my rental house. I hadn't physically checked the books since the 1993 incident. I drove to the school at around 7 p.m. The building was dark except for the security lights in the main hallway. I used my key card to enter through the side door of the old wing and walked to my office. Everything was as I had left it. Scanner, computer, desk lamp, the binder with the project scope. Normal. I went upstairs. The hallway was dark. The two dead fluorescent panels were still dead, and the two working ones were off. I used my phone flashlight. The archive door was closed. I opened it with my key and stepped inside. The yearbooks were where they always were. Rows of them on the metal shelves, spines facing out, dates visible. I walked down the row and pulled the 1986 edition. I opened it to the senior composite and held my phone light over the page. Karen Weber, row 1, position 2. She had moved in the physical yearbook too. She was in the exact same position as the most recent digital scan front row, second from the left. Not where I had first found her weeks ago. She had migrated forward from the back of the photograph to the front, and the physical, printed, decades-old page reflected the change as if it had always been that way. I checked the 2005 yearbook. Emily Marsh, dead center of the composite. Same as the scan. I checked 4 more. Every single one matched the most recent scan positions, not the original positions I had documented. The physical books had changed. Ink on paper, printed 37 years ago, had changed. And this thought surfaced with the cold certainty of something that has been waiting to be acknowledged. The books had always shown her in these positions, and what had changed was my memory of where she had been. My documentation was wrong, my spreadsheet was wrong, my original scans were wrong, and whatever I was looking at now was what had always been true. I was holding the 2005 yearbook open to the sophomore composite when I heard the humming again, same as before. A single sustained note, barely audible, coming from the hallway, coming from the direction of the third door. I set the yearbook down. I walked to the archive door and listened. The humming continued, that same unwavering tone, mechanical in its consistency, as if the building itself was resonating at a frequency just above the threshold of hearing. This time I didn't stop at the door. I had been thinking about the key ring. Dale had given me keys to the old wing of my office, the archive, the side entrance, the utility closet at the end of the first floor hall. But there were more keys on the ring than doors I had been given access to. 3 extra keys that didn't seem to correspond to anything. I had asked Dale about them during my first week, and he had said they were old, probably for doors that had been replaced. I stood in front of the third door and tried the first extra key. It didn't fit. The second extra key slid into the lock and turned. The humming stopped the moment the lock clicked. I pushed the door open. The room beyond was smaller than the archive, maybe 15 by 15 feet. It had the same old tile floor, the same institutional walls, the same ceiling with its grid of acoustic tiles. There was a single window, covered from the inside with what appeared to be black construction paper, blocking all outside light. The room was lit by a single fluorescent fixture that hummed and flickered in a way that made the light pulse slightly, giving everything a faintly stroboscopic quality. The room was not empty. Against the far wall there was a table, an old wooden teacher's desk, the kind with the wide flat surface and the drawers down one side. On the table were yearbooks, not arranged neatly on shelves like in the archive, piled, stacked, some of them open, some of them closed, arranged in a pattern that I couldn't immediately decipher. There were maybe 40 of them. On the wall above the table, someone had pinned photographs. Not Scan's original photographs, the kind taken by a school photographer with a studio camera. Individual portraits, 8x10s pinned directly to the drywall with thumbtacks arranged in rows. They were all of her. Dozens of individual portraits of the same face, the same dark hair, the same cheekbones, the same smile. Some were in color, some in black and white. The older ones had the saturated tones of 1980s film photography. The newer ones had the flat, even lighting of digital cameras. Each one was labeled with a handwritten tag, a name and a year. Karen Weber, 1986. Laura Sheehan, 1987. Laura Sheehan, 1988. Laura Sheehan, 1989. Danielle Farrow, 1990. Every single appearance, documented, collected, preserved. Someone had been tracking her. Someone at this school had known about the girl in the yearbooks for decades, and they had created this room, this hidden archive within an archive, to monitor her appearances. I stepped further into the room. The yearbooks on the table were all open to pages featuring her. Some had sticky notes attached, with handwritten annotations in a cramped, precise hand. Moved from row 4 to row 2 between October and March. Third migration observed, pattern consistent with previous cycles. Name change, Christina Bell-Sarah Kettner. No enrollment record found for either name in corresponding year. Cross-referenced with county birth records, no match. Gap year, 1998. No appearance in composite or any other photograph. Confirmed through 3 independent examinations of the physical yearbook. Note: 1998 was the year the new gymnasium was completed and the old wing was closed for renovations. Possible connection? Important. Do not remove yearbooks from the archive for extended periods. Last time this was done, 1996 AK investigation, she did not appear in the following year's edition. Theory: her presence in the yearbook requires the physical proximity of the previous yearbooks. The collection is the anchor. I read that note 3 times. The collection is the anchor. There was a manila folder on the table beneath the stack of yearbooks. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were handwritten pages, a journal or log of some kind, written in the same cramped hand as the sticky notes. The first page was dated September 1992. The handwriting belonged to Nancy Pullman, the English teacher. The one Dale had told me about, the one who had noticed something and started asking questions, and then fled Grayfield in 2004. She hadn't just noticed something. She had spent 12 years studying it. I started reading. Nancy Pullman's journal was not organized chronologically. It was organized by topic, as if she had been assembling a research paper rather than keeping a diary. There were sections labeled appearances, name patterns, gap years, physical changes, and the one that made me sit down on the cold tile floor of that hidden room, encounters. The encounters section began with an entry dated March 14, 1997. Today was the first time I saw her outside of a photograph. I was grading papers in my classroom, room 214, after the final bell. The hallways were mostly empty, maybe a few students at their lockers, the cleaning crew starting their rounds. I looked up from my desk and she was standing in the doorway. She looked exactly like the photographs, exactly. The same face, the same hair, the same slight tilt of the head. She was wearing a Grayfield High sweatshirt and jeans, the same outfit that dozens of students wear every day. She could have been any student, but she wasn't any student. She was her. She was smiling. I asked her if she needed something. She didn't answer. She just stood there smiling, looking at me with an expression that I can only describe as recognition. As if she knew me, as if she had been waiting to see me specifically. I stood up from my desk. The moment I moved, she turned and walked down the hallway. Not quickly, but a normal walking pace. I went to the doorway and looked out. The hallway was empty. She was gone. Not around a corner, not into a classroom. Gone. In the 2 seconds between when she turned away and when I reached the doorway, she had vanished from a straight 60-foot hallway with no intersections for another 30 feet. I checked the nearest classrooms, empty. I checked the restroom, empty. I walked the entire length of the hallway, nothing. I went back to my desk and sat down, and I realized that my hands were shaking. Not from fear, or not only from fear, from the recognition. Because when she looked at me, I knew that she knew what I had been doing. She knew I had been studying her. She knew about this room, about the journal, about the photographs I had collected. She knew I knew. And she was smiling. I put the journal down. My hands were not steady. The fluorescent light flickered above me, and in the half-second of darkness between flickers, the room felt wrong, felt like it had shifted slightly, like the walls had moved an inch closer while the light was out. I picked the journal back up. I needed to read more. I needed to understand what Nancy Pullman had learned in 12 years of studying this phenomenon, because I had been here for 5 weeks, and I was already in over my head. The next entries in the encounters section were spread across several years. Nancy had seen the girl 5 more times between 1997 and 2003, always in the school building, always after hours when the hallways were empty or nearly empty, always briefly a glimpse in a doorway, a figure at the end of a corridor, a face in a window reflection that wasn't attached to anyone standing nearby. Each time the girl was smiling. Each time she appeared only when Nancy was alone. Each time she vanished before Nancy could approach her, interact with her, or confirm her physical reality. But there was one entry that was different. It was dated November 12, 2003, and it was the longest entry in the journal. Nancy's handwriting was less controlled here. the letters larger and more angular, as if she had been writing quickly or writing under stress. Tonight I stayed late to finish the quarterly book inventory for the library committee. It was after 9 p.m. when I locked my classroom and headed for the east stairwell. The building was empty, or I thought it was empty. The lights in the hallway were on their night setting, every other panel active, creating alternating pools of light and shadow that I have walked through 1,000 times without feeling anything but mild annoyance at the district's commitment to saving electricity. I was between the second and third pools of light when I heard the humming. I have heard it before, in the old wing, coming from the third room, but this was the first time I had heard it in the main building. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere, from the walls, from the ceiling, from the floor beneath my feet. A single sustained note, a vibration more than a sound, as if the building itself was a tuning fork that had been struck by something I couldn't see. I stopped walking. The humming continued, and then very slowly I became aware that I was not alone in the hallway. She was standing at the far end, maybe 60 feet from me, in one of the pools of shadow between the active light panels. I could see her outline the shape of a girl, standing still, facing me. In the dim light, I could not make out her features, but I didn't need to. I knew who it was. I knew it the way you know your own heartbeat, the way you know the sound of your own name. I knew. She didn't move. I didn't move. We stood there in that hallway, 60 feet apart, and the humming grew louder, not dramatically, not like a crescendo, but incrementally, the way a headache builds. So slowly that you don't realize it's getting worse until it's all you can feel. And then she spoke. I need to be very clear about this. In 7 years of studying her, in 5 previous encounters, she had never spoken. She had never made a sound of any kind. She had appeared, she had smiled, and she had vanished. That was the pattern. That was what I had come to expect. She said my name, Nancy. One word, my name, spoken in a voice that was, I don't have the right words for this, spoken in a voice that was not one voice. It was layered, multiple voices speaking in perfect unison, some higher, some lower, some that sounded like children, and some that sounded like old women, and some that sounded like nothing human at all. My name spoken by a chorus that was pretending to be a single person and not quite managing it. I ran. I am not ashamed to say it. I ran down the hallway in the opposite direction, through the west stairwell, out the side entrance, across the parking lot to my car. I drove home at twice the speed limit with every light in my car on and the radio turned up to maximum volume because I could not bear the silence. And here is the part that I have been sitting at my kitchen table for 3 hours trying to decide whether to write down, because writing it makes it real, and I don't want it to be real. When I got home, I went to the bathroom to wash my face. I turned on the light and looked in the mirror. My reflection smiled at me. I was not smiling. My face was white and drawn and terrified, but my reflection was smiling. The same smile. Her smile. The 5-degree tilt, the directness, the quality of being smiled at rather than being looked at. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then my reflection was normal again, my own frightened face staring back at me from the glass. I need to leave. I don't know how to leave. I don't know if leaving will help, but I need to try. Whatever this is, whatever she is not confined to the yearbooks anymore. She is not confined to the school anymore. She is in me now. She is in what I have seen and what I have documented and what I know. And the knowing is a door, and the door is open, and I do not know how to close it. That was the last entry in the encounter section. The next date in the journal was January 2004 in a section labeled Exit Strategy, and it consisted of a single paragraph. I have contacted a former colleague at Ohio State who specializes in folklore and local mythology. I told him a sanitized version, not the full truth, just enough to get his professional opinion. He said something that I keep turning over in my mind. Some phenomena are not entities that exist independently. They are patterns that exist in the act of being observed. You cannot separate the phenomenon from the observer, because the observer is part of the phenomenon. I asked him what that meant practically. He said, stop observing, remove yourself from the pattern, and hope that the pattern doesn't follow you. I am going to try. I read Nancy Pullman's entire journal that night, sitting on the floor of the hidden room in the old wing, my back against the wall, the fluorescent light flickering above me. It took 4 hours. When I finished, it was past midnight, and the building around me was so silent that I could hear my own blood moving through my ears. I should tell you what I took from the journal, the essential findings, the things that Nancy Pullman learned in 12 years that I was now learning in one night. First, she was not a ghost. Nancy was emphatic about this. Whatever appeared in those yearbook photos was not the spirit of Karen Weber, the girl who died in 1986. Karen Weber was dead. She was buried in Grayfield Cemetery, Plot 47, Section C. Nancy had visited the grave. She had spoken to Gerald Weber, Karen's father, who was still living in Grayfield in the 1990s. He confirmed that his daughter was dead. He confirmed that she was buried. And when Nancy showed him a yearbook from 1993, the one with Megan Hale, and pointed to the face, he looked at it for a long time and then said, "That's not Karen. That's not Karen. Not that looks like Karen, or that reminds me of Karen." He said it with the certainty of a father who would know his own daughter's face anywhere. The face in the yearbook looked exactly like Karen Weber, but Gerald Weber looked at it and said it was not his daughter. Second, the gaps mattered. Nancy had identified a pattern in the years when the girl did not appear. In most cases, the gap years coincided with some form of disruption to the school renovations. A fire in 1992 that damaged 2 classrooms, the gymnasium closure in 1998, the transition to digital photography in 2004. Something about the disruption of routine, the breaking of the school's normal pattern, seemed to suppress her appearance. Third, she was getting closer. In the early years, late 1980s, early 1990s, the girl appeared only in composite photos, only as one face among many. By the late 1990s, she had started appearing in person, visible to Nancy and, Nancy suspected, to others who had become aware of her. By 2003, she was speaking. She was interacting. She was no longer a static image in a photograph. She was becoming something else. Fourth, the yearbook was not the cause, it was the symptom. Nancy's theory, and she admitted it was speculative, built on fragmentary evidence and intuition, was that the girl in the yearbook was a manifestation of something that existed within the school itself. Not in the building, not in the bricks and mortar, but in the institution. In the patterns of behavior, the daily routines, the annual cycles of enrollment and graduation, and photograph and publication. The school was a system, and the girl was an expression of that system, a face that the system generated, because systems want to be seen, the way a river wants to reach the sea. It wasn't conscious, it wasn't malicious. It was automatic, inevitable. But this was the part of Nancy's journal that kept me awake that night and many nights after it was over. Whatever process generated the face in the yearbook was becoming more sophisticated, more capable, more present. In 1986, it could produce a static image. By 2003, it could produce a walking, speaking figure that existed in 3-dimensional space and could interact with living people. Nancy's theory was that the process was accelerating, that each year brought it closer to some threshold that she could not define, but could feel approaching. She called it the convergence, the point at which the girl in the yearbook would become indistinguishable from a real student, the point at which she wouldn't just appear in photographs and vanish from hallways, but would sit in classrooms, answer to her name, eat lunch in the cafeteria, walk home with friends, would become, for all practical purposes, a student at Grayfield High School. And once she did that, once she crossed that threshold, Nancy believed that something fundamental about the school would change. Something about the nature of the institution itself would shift. The way a crystal shifts when a single atom moves, rearranging the entire structure around a new center. She didn't know what the change would be. She didn't know what the girl wanted, or if wanting was even a concept that applied. She just knew that it was coming, and that she didn't want to be there when it arrived. So she left. And now I was sitting in the room she had abandoned, reading her words by the light of a flickering fluorescent tube. And I understood, not intellectually, not abstractly, but in my bones, in the part of my brain that predates language. I understood why she had packed her house in a panic and driven away from Grayfield without looking back. Because the girl knew I was here. She knew what I was reading. She knew that the knowledge was transferring from Nancy to me, that the pattern of observation was continuing, that someone was still watching, and she was getting closer. I left the hidden room at 1 a.m. I locked the door behind me. I went downstairs, locked the side entrance, got in my car, and drove to my rental house. I didn't look at the upper windows. I didn't want to see if the light was on again. The next 2 weeks were exercising self-deception. I told myself I was going to finish the digitization project, file my final report, and leave Grayfield at the end of my contract. I told myself I was going to stop investigating, stop looking at the yearbooks, stop thinking about the girl with the smile and the 5-degree tilt. I was going to do my job and go home. I lasted 4 days. On October 12th, I went back to the hidden room. I told myself I was just going to reread a section of Nancy's journal, a passage about the gap years that I hadn't fully absorbed. But once I was in there, I started pulling out the yearbook she had annotated, cross-referencing her observations with my own spreadsheet, looking for patterns she might have missed. And I found one. Nancy had noted the gap years, the years when the girl didn't appear, and correlated them with disruptions to the school. But she had missed something in the sequence. Or maybe she had noticed it and chosen not to write it down, because writing it down would have made it too real. The gap years weren't random. They followed a pattern. After every gap, the girl's next appearance moved her closer to the front of the composite photo. Not by one position or two, by a consistent ratio. If she was in row 4 before the gap, she'd be in row 2 after. If she was in row 3, she'd be in row 1. Each gap was followed by a leap forward. And in the most recent yearbooks, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, 2023, there had been no gaps at all. 5 consecutive appearances, the longest unbroken streak since Laura Sheehan in 1987 to 1989. And in each of those 5 yearbooks, she was in the front row, dead center, no more migration. She had arrived. I was mapping this on the whiteboard in the hidden room when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps, a man's gait. I froze, uncapped marker in hand, and listened. Ethan? Dale. His voice sounded wrong, thin, like he was speaking from inside a closet, or from very far away, or through a layer of something that absorbed sound. Ethan, are you in there? I went to the door and opened it. Dale was standing in the hallway, maybe 10 feet from the door. The overhead fluorescents were off, and the only light was the spill from the room behind me, casting a long shadow down the corridor. In that shadow, Dale looked smaller than usual, diminished, like a photograph of Dale rather than the man himself. Dale, what are you doing here? It's after midnight. I saw your car in the lot. He didn't move closer. I need to talk to you. Come in. No! The word was immediate. Absolute. I'm not going in that room, and you need to come out of it, right now. Something in his voice made me step into the hallway and pull the door closed behind me. We stood there in the near darkness, and I could see now that Dale was not well. His face was pale, and there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the October chill. His eyes were moving, not looking at me, but scanning the hallway behind me, the ceiling, the floor, as if he expected something to emerge from any surface at any moment. What's wrong? I asked. I went home tonight, had dinner, watched the news. Normal evening. He was speaking in short, clipped sentences, the way people speak when they're trying to control something, their breathing, their emotions, their voice. Around 10 o'clock, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The window over the sink faces the backyard. I looked out. He stopped, swallowed. She was standing in my backyard. The hallway felt colder. Not metaphorically, the temperature dropped. I could feel it on my skin, a tangible change, like opening a refrigerator door. The girl from... Don't. Dale held up his hand. Don't say it. Don't describe her. Don't connect it to whatever you found in those yearbooks. I told you I didn't want to know, and I meant it. And I was right, and it doesn't matter because she was in my yard, Ethan, standing next to the maple tree. Not moving, just standing there. What did you do? I turned off the kitchen light. I stood in the dark and watched her through the window. She didn't move. She just stood there facing the house, facing the window for 20 minutes. And then she smiled. Dale's voice broke on the last word. Not cracked, broke, like a rope that had been bearing too much weight for too long and finally gave way. His eyes filled and he wiped them with the back of his hand, an angry gesture, the gesture of a man who didn't want to be afraid and was furious that he was. I've worked in this building for 31 years, he said. I have mopped every floor, fixed every toilet, replaced every light bulb. I know every sound this building makes. I know what's normal and what isn't. And I have spent 31 years not looking at the yearbooks, not going in that room, not asking questions about things that don't add up. Because that was the deal, Ethan. That was the understanding. You don't look and it doesn't see you. What deal? What understanding? Who made this? It's not a deal anyone made. It's just how it works. The way you don't look directly at the sun, the way you don't swim in water you can't see the bottom of. You just know. Everyone in this town knows. Not consciously, not like a rule you can recite. But you know, you feel it, and you don't look. But I looked, I said. You looked, and now she's into my yard. Because I talked to you. Because I said those names out loud when you asked me. Because that was enough, that tiny little crack was enough for her to see me. Dale, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You need to stop. Whatever you're doing, whatever you found, you need to stop right now. Burn that spreadsheet, delete those scans, walk away from this project, and tell boss you quit, and leave Grayfield tonight. I can't just... You can. You can and you should. And if you don't, you're going to end up like Nancy Pullman. Except Nancy was smart enough to run before it got this far. He reached out and gripped my arm. His hand was shaking. Promise me you'll stop. I looked at Dale Whitford, 60 years old, 31 years in this building. A man who had built his life on the principle of not seeing what was in front of him. And I felt something I hadn't felt since I'd arrived in Grayfield. Genuine fear. Not the academic thrill of an unsolved puzzle. Not the archivist's excitement of an anomalous finding. Fear. The simple animal recognition that I was in danger. I'll stop, I said. He released my arm. He nodded once. He turned and walked down the hallway toward the stairs, and I watched him go. And I noticed something that made my stomach clench. Dale cast no shadow. The light from the hidden room was behind me, illuminating the hallway. I cast a shadow long and dark, stretching ahead of me toward the stairs. But Dale, walking through the same light, cast nothing. He moved down the hallway like a figure in a photograph, flat and dimensionless. And then he was gone around the corner, and I heard his footsteps descending the stairs, growing fainter, and then the distant sound of a door closing. I stood alone in the hallway. The humming started again, faintly. Not from the third room this time, from everywhere, from the walls, from the floor, from inside my own head maybe. That single sustained note vibrating at the threshold of perception, as if the building, the institution, the system, the pattern was acknowledging that I was still here. I went downstairs, I got in my car, I drove home, I did not sleep. Dale didn't come to work the next day. Linda said he had called in sick. That wasn't unusual. Dale took a sick day every few months, usually for back pain or a cold. I went about my work, scanning documents that weren't yearbooks, pretending that everything was normal. At lunch, I ate at Rosie's Diner and listened to the local farmers talk about corn prices and the weather. I drove back to the school and scanned more documents. I did not go upstairs. Dale didn't come to work the day after that either, or the day after that. On the fourth day, I asked Linda if she had heard from him. She said she hadn't, but that it wasn't uncommon for Dale to take a few days in a row if his back was acting up. She said this with the practiced ease of a woman who had been providing plausible explanations for unusual things for 22 years. On the fifth day, I drove to Dale's house. It was a small ranch-style home on the south side of town, well-maintained, with a tidy front yard and a detached garage. His truck was in the driveway. The front door was locked. The windows were dark. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Called his name. Nothing. I walked around to the back of the house. The backyard was small, maybe 40 feet deep, bordered by a chain-link fence and a row of arborvitae that separated Dale's property from the neighbors. There was a maple tree in the center of the yard, the tree where Dale had said she was standing. The grass under the maple tree was dead, not dying dead. A perfect circle of brown, desiccated grass, maybe 4 feet in diameter, centered on the spot where someone might have stood. The rest of the yard was green and healthy, but under that tree, in that circle, nothing was growing. The soil looked dry and hard, as if it had been baked. I looked at the kitchen window, the one Dale had looked through when he saw her. There was something on the glass. I walked closer. It was on the inside of the window. A handprint. A small handprint, pressed flat against the glass from inside the house. Too small to be Dale's, the size of a teenager's hand. I called the police, not because I had a rational explanation for what I was seeing, but because Dale was missing, and calling the police was what normal people did when someone was missing. A deputy from the Harmon County Sheriff's Department arrived 30 minutes later, a young guy named Reeves who clearly didn't love the idea of breaking into someone's house on the word of a guy who'd been in town for 2 months. You say he hasn't been to work in 5 days? 5 days. No calls, no messages. His truck is here. Deputy Reeves looked at the truck, looked at the house, looked at me. He got family in the area? I don't know. I'm not from here. I just know he hasn't shown up. Reeves called it in, and eventually, after some back and forth with his sergeant, they authorized a welfare check. Reeves put on gloves, went to the back door, found it unlocked, and went inside. I waited on the back porch. I could hear Reeves moving through the house, opening doors, calling Dale's name. The house was small. It didn't take long. He came back to the porch after about 5 minutes. His face was neutral, professional, but there was something behind his eyes that wasn't. He's not here, Reeves said. House is empty. His truck is in the driveway. I see that. His back door was unlocked. I see that too. So where is he? Reeves took off his gloves and folded them carefully. Mr. Calloway, I'm going to file a report and we'll follow up. If he turns up, have him give us a call. Did you see anything unusual inside? Reeves paused. Just for a second. No, he said. Nothing unusual. He left. I stood on Dale's back porch and looked at the dead circle under the maple tree and the handprint on the kitchen window. And I knew the way Dale had known, the way Nancy had known, the way everyone in Grayfield knew without knowing that Dale Whitford was gone. Not missing, not on an unannounced trip. Gone. The way Nancy was gone. The way perhaps others had been gone before them, people who had looked too closely, who had spoken the names, who had cracked the door a fraction of an inch too wide. I went home and started packing. I want to be clear about the chronology of what happened next, because my memory of it is fractured, and I've had to reconstruct the timeline from text messages, emails, and the GPS data on my phone. It was October 18th, a Friday. I had decided to leave Grayfield the following morning. I spent the evening packing my car. I hadn't brought much, so it was mostly clothes, my laptop, and the external hard drives containing the digitization work. I planned to email Dr. Voss my resignation in the morning, leave the keys on my desk, and drive back to Columbus without saying goodbye to anyone. At around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. No area code matched anything in Ohio. The message was 2 words. Don't leave. I stared at it. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Who is this?" and sent it. The reply came instantly. Same number. "You know who this is?" I put the phone down. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. My mind was not. I went back to the phone and typed, "What do you want?" No reply. I waited 5 minutes, 10, 30, nothing. At 10:15, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a notification from the cloud storage service where I had been uploading the yearbook scans. The notification said, "One file modified." I opened the app. The modified file was the scan of the 2024 yearbook, which didn't exist yet. The 2024 yearbook had not been published. The school year was barely 2 months old. There was no 2024 yearbook. But there was a file in my cloud storage labeled Grayfield_Sentinel_2024_. _complete.pdf, and it had been modified 17 seconds ago. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct I had was screaming at me not to open it. But the archivist in me, that cursed, stubborn, puzzle-solving part of my brain that had brought me to this point, opened it. It was a complete yearbook. Every page, cover to cover. Classes, clubs, sports teams, candidates, faculty, administration. A yearbook for a school year that was only 2 months old, containing class photos of students who hadn't yet been photographed, team pictures from seasons that hadn't been played, and a faculty section that included every current staff member, including me. I was on the faculty page. A photo of me sitting at my desk in the old wing office, the scanner behind me, a yearbook open in front of me. I was not smiling. I was looking directly at the camera with the expression of a man who didn't know his picture was being taken. I had never posed for this photo. No one had ever taken this photo. But there I was, captured in a yearbook that didn't exist, for a school year that was still in progress, in perfect clarity and resolution. I scrolled to the sophomore class composite. She was there, front row, dead center, same face, same smile, same tilt. And this time there was something different. In every previous yearbook, she had been looking at the camera. That directness I had noticed from the beginning, the quality of being smiled at, of being seen by the photograph rather than just looking at it. In every photo from 1986 to 2023, her eyes were aimed at the lens. In the 2024 composite, she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking to her right. I scrolled back to the faculty page. My photo was positioned on the page directly to the right of the sophomore composite. She was looking at me. I closed the file. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the front door of the rental house and opened it because I needed air. I needed the October night to hit my face and remind me that I existed in a physical world with physical rules, where photographs did not look at you, and yearbooks did not write themselves, and dead girls did not stand in backyards smiling at kitchen windows. The street was quiet. Elm Street at 10:30 on a Friday night in Grayfield, Ohio, was the definition of quiet. Porch lights on a few houses, a cat slinking under a parked car, the distant sound of a TV from somewhere down the block. And standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my house, maybe 30 feet from where I stood in the open doorway, was a girl. She was wearing a Grayfield High sweatshirt and jeans. Her dark hair fell to her shoulders, parted slightly off-center. She was standing perfectly still facing me, and she was smiling with the exact smile I had seen in 26 yearbook photos and dozens of individual portraits pinned to the wall of a hidden room in the old wing of a school that had been holding a secret for 37 years. I couldn't move. I want you to understand that. I physically could not move. My body was locked in place, every muscle rigid, as if the signal from my brain to my limbs had been severed. I stood in the doorway of my rental house, and she stood on the sidewalk, and we looked at each other across 30 feet of October darkness, and the humming started. It was louder than I had ever heard it, not coming from a building, this time coming from everywhere, from the pavement, from the sky, from the trees, from the air itself. That single sustained note, amplified beyond the threshold of comfort, vibrating in my chest and my teeth and the plates of my skull. The streetlights flickered, the porch light behind me flickered. The world stuttered like a film catching in a projector, and for a fraction of a second, a tenth of a second, maybe less, everything went dark. When the light returned, she was closer. 20 feet now. She hadn't walked. She hadn't moved in any way that I could perceive. She had simply been at 30 feet, and then the lights had flickered, and now she was at 20. Same posture, same smile, same slight leftward tilt. Ethan, my name, spoken in the voice Nancy had described, the layered voice, the chorus pretending to be singular. Multiple registers overlapping, harmonizing, creating a sound that was almost language, and almost music, and almost neither. My name spoken by something that knew me, that had been watching me look at it for weeks, that had been waiting for me to get close enough. Ethan, stay. The lights flickered again. Darkness, then light. She was at 10 feet. I could see details now that the yearbook photos had never shown. The The texture of her skin, which was too smooth, not young smooth, but artificial smooth. Like skin rendered by a computer that understood the concept but not the imperfection. The hair which didn't move in the slight breeze that was stirring the trees on Elm Street. The eyes which were dark and deep and focused on me with an intensity that felt like weight, like pressure, like gravity. And the smile. Up close, the smile was wrong. It was structurally correct, lips curved upward, cheeks engaged, the muscles of the face arranged in the universal configuration of human pleasure. But it was fixed, static. The rest of her face was capable of micro-expressions, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a barely perceptible shift in the brow, but the smile didn't change. It was the one constant, the anchor, the thing that had been the same in every photograph since 1986, and now standing 10 feet from me on a sidewalk in Ohio. It was still the same, and I understood, finally, viscerally, in the last clear thought I had before the fear took everything, that the smile was not an expression. It was a feature, a structural element, part of the architecture of whatever this thing was. She was not smiling at me. She was made of smiling. I broke. Whatever paralysis had held me shattered, and I stumbled backward into the house and slammed the door. I locked it. Deadbolt, chain, the flimsy little push button on the knob. I backed away from the door until I hit the kitchen counter, and then I stood there breathing in harsh, ragged gasps, staring at the door, waiting for a knock that didn't come. The humming stopped. The silence was worse. I stood in my kitchen for 10 minutes without moving. Then I went to every window in the house and looked out. The sidewalk was empty. The street was empty. She was gone. I grabbed my car keys, my laptop, my phone, and my wallet. I left everything else. I walked out the back door because I couldn't bring myself to open the front door, the door she had been facing. I circled around the house to the driveway, got in my car, started the engine, and pulled out onto Elm Street. I looked in the rearview mirror as I drove away. She was standing in the middle of the street behind me, growing smaller in the mirror, still facing me, still smiling. She stood there until I turned the corner, and she was gone. I drove to Columbus. 3 hours. I didn't stop. I didn't turn on the radio. I drove in silence and darkness, and I watched the rearview mirror, and I did not see her again. That was 6 months ago. I want to tell you that I'm fine. I want to tell you that leaving Grayfield solved the problem, that the distance was enough, that I drove away from the pattern, and the pattern stayed behind. I want to tell you that. I can't. The first thing happened 2 weeks after I left. I was in my apartment in Columbus. I had gone back to my old place, the mausoleum of the failed relationship, because I had nowhere else to go and I was trying to sleep. It was around 2 a.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a notification from the cloud storage service. One file modified. I didn't open it. I deleted the notification. I deleted the cloud storage app. The next morning, I deleted my entire account, which contained every scan I had made during the digitization project. Months of work gone. I didn't care. I wanted every digital trace of those yearbooks erased from my possession. 3 days later, the app was back on my phone. I hadn't reinstalled it. It was just there on my home screen, as if it had never been deleted. The account was active, every file was intact, and there was a new notification. 2 files modified. I threw the phone in the trash. I bought a new one the next day. For a week, nothing happened. Then the cloud storage app appeared on the new phone. Same account, same files, same notifications. 3 files modified. I stopped counting. I tried to find Nancy Pullman. I searched every database I had access to, public records, social media, alumni directories, address lookups. Nothing. Nancy Pullman had ceased to exist in any searchable record after January 2004. No address, no phone number, no social media profile, no obituary. She had either achieved complete anonymity or she was gone in the same way Dale was gone. Dale. I should tell you about Dale. 2 weeks after I left, I called the Harmon County Sheriff's Department and asked about the welfare check on Dale Whitford. Deputy Reeves took my call. He told me that Dale had returned home and was fine. Back at work, no issues. I called the school. Linda answered. I asked about Dale. Dale? He's here. Want me to transfer you? Yes. There was a click, a moment of hold music, and then a voice. Maintenance, Dale speaking. It was Dale's voice. The same cadence, the same spare diction, the same Ohio flatness. Dale, it's Ethan. Ethan Calloway. A pause. Who? Ethan, the digitization specialist. I worked in the old wing. We talked several times. I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name. Must be some mix-up. Dale, we spoke in the maintenance closet. You told me about Nancy Pullman. You came to the school at midnight to warn me. Sir, I think you have the wrong person. I've been at this school 31 years and I don't recall any Ethan. Is there something I can help you with? I hung up. Dale was at work. Dale was fine. Dale didn't remember me. Or Dale was not Dale anymore. Or Dale had always been this version, and the version who had warned me, who had told me about Nancy, who had stood in the hallway without a shadow, that version had never existed, had been a memory I had manufactured, a pattern my brain had generated to fill a gap. I don't know. I don't know which is true. I don't know if truth is even the right framework for understanding what's happening. Here is the last thing I need to tell you. 3 weeks ago, I received a package in the mail. No return address, postmarked Grayfield, Ohio. Inside was a book, the 2024 Grayfield Sentinel, the yearbook, the one that shouldn't have existed when I saw the digital file, but which now existed physically, printed and bound, sitting in my hands like any other book. I opened it. The faculty page was there. My photo was there, me at my desk, not smiling, looking at the camera I had never seen. Beneath it, a caption, Ethan Calloway, archival specialist. I turned to the sophomore class composite. She was front row, center, same smile, same tilt, same eyes, but this time in the printed yearbook, she wasn't looking to the right. She was looking straight ahead, straight at the camera, straight at whoever was holding the book. At me. Her name, according to the caption, was Ethan Calloway. No, I read it again. The name under her photo, under the same face that had been Karen Weber and Laura Sheehan and Danielle Farrow and Megan Hale and all the others. The name under her photo was not Ethan Calloway. I had read it wrong. The light in my apartment was bad. I was tired. I was wrong. The name was Elena Calloway. Elena, a name I have never heard in my life, connected to a surname that is mine, printed under a face that has existed in Grayfield yearbooks since 1986, in a yearbook that should not exist, mailed to me from a town I fled in the middle of the night. I closed the yearbook. I put it on my kitchen table. I went to the bathroom to wash my face because it was the only thing I could think of to do, the only normal action my brain could generate. I turned on the light. I looked in the mirror. I was not smiling. My reflection was. It lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4. And then my reflection was normal, tired, pale, frightened, mine. But for those 3 seconds, it had smiled at me with her smile. The 5-degree tilt, the directness, the quality of being looked at by something that knows you. I left the bathroom. I went back to the kitchen table. I opened the yearbook to the sophomore composite. She was still there. Elena Calloway, front row, center. But now there was someone standing behind her in the photo. A figure in the back row who hadn't been there before. A man, mid-30s, brown hair, thin face, not smiling. Looking at the camera with the expression of someone who doesn't know their picture is being taken. Me. I am in the yearbook now, standing behind her. Part of the composite, part of the pattern. I don't know what happens next. Nancy's colleague at Ohio State said some phenomena exist only in the act of being observed. If that's true, then I'm part of it now. I looked and the looking made me visible, and the visibility made me part of the picture. Literally. I am in the yearbook. I am in her yearbook, standing behind her, and I don't know if that means she owns me now, or if it means I was always there, or if it means that the distinction between the observer and the observed was always an illusion. And the only real thing is the pattern itself, the system, the annual cycle of photograph and publication, and face after face after face, smiling, always smiling. I have the yearbook on the table in front of me as I write this. I check it every morning. Every morning, the photo is slightly different. The man behind her, me, is slightly closer, leaning in, as if the photograph is a slow-motion collapse, and I am falling toward her, frame by frame, day by day. Eventually, I think, I'll reach her. I'll be standing next to her, and then I'll be in front of her, and then it will just be me, my face, in a yearbook, smiling, tilted 5 degrees to the left, looking at whoever opens the page, and they'll wonder who I am, and they'll check the enrollment records, and they won't find anything. And if they're smart, they'll close the book and walk away and never think about it again. But they won't. They never do, because the pattern needs observers the way a fire needs air. And there's always someone who looks too closely, someone who notices, someone who can't resist pulling the thread. If you've read this far, you are that someone. I'm sorry. Don't look at her smile. Don't count the years. Don't check the names. And whatever you do, don't open the yearbook that arrives in your mail next week. It's already been printed. You're already in it. You just don't know where she put you yet.